All right, so y'all know how people always be saying that Christianity was forced on black slaves. I hate that argument because I feel like it kind of undermines what Christianity is in the first place. You have to believe for yourself in the God of the Bible. It's not something that someone can force on you. Now, someone could force you to go to church or mimic certain things or regurgitate certain information, but they can't make you believe that information. Anyway, so I'm reading this book called The Color of Compromise by Jemar Tisby. I'm not claiming to agree with everything written in this book. I haven't even finished the whole book, but he makes a few interesting points. He says, prior to the revivals of the mid-1700s, few enslaved Africans converted to Christianity. White enslavers feared that evangelizing would plant the troublesome seeds of liberation in the minds and hearts of their chattel. But Africans did not come to the American colonies devoid of spirituality. Many of them practiced the indigenous religions of tribes in West Africa, and a significant number were Muslim. Africans preferred their own form of faith to that of their white enslavers. That's already a lot to unpack right there, because it's saying, for one, a lot of white people did not even want to preach the gospel to black people because they thought it would incite an insurrection, kind of like in the cases of Nat Turner and John Brown and the Haitian Revolution. And then a lot of Africans was just like, we don't want y'all dusty, crusty Christian religion, or at least whatever form of Christianity they were presenting to them. They was like, yeah, it's a no for me, fam. So what changed? How did so many Africans and African Americans become Christians? The Great Awakening initiated the first significant number of conversions to Christianity among enslaved Africans in the colonies. Evangelical preachers, although European, pushed against the traditional customs of established denominations, including the segregation or exclusion of African people. Revivalists emphasized the spiritual equality of all people and preached to interracial crowds. Black people even became ordained ministers and missionaries. So in a nutshell, the first Great Awakening was the catalyst for the beginning of mass conversions of African slaves to Christianity.
Christianity has been misused for hundreds of years to keep your people in subjugation. And I'm speaking now a reality that the history books do not record, but history does. Christianity was used because if I said, okay, you don't believe the way I believe, and Christianity is the best way to believe, so I'm going to take you, and it's going to be for your own good, honey. It's going to be for your own good. I'm going to take you, and I'm going to tear away everything about you, and just keep your hands and your feet, because they can help me getting off. But I'm going to do this for your own good, because I'm going to give you a God. Now, what does that God look like? The reality of it is when he came here, he didn't look like me. So what am I going to do about that? I'm going to make him look like me. So for hundreds of years, we've been telling you, and now you have to keep in mind that we took away any other God that you might have through force, through fear, through pain, through any means necessary. We've given your people a God that looks like me so that you don't have any qualm about bowing down to me. See, because this is the image of God. I don't know of any sin that we've committed that's greater than that one.
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shah Bahashim, Recha HaKwadash, and double honors to the elder apostles and the bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to you other elders, you brethren, you fellow believers of this truth. Shalom to you few sisters. Shalom to the elect. So anyway, this is going to be an interesting video because this woman, and we're going to read some history, right? Because this woman and a lot of Christians say that slavery. It's like everybody's trying to write out slavery for whatever reason. Slavery had nothing to do with conversions of Christians. And we're going to show you that's an outright lie. Just simple Google, AI, whatever you want to call it, read the books. When anybody come with these new books like in the 1990s and 2000s and try to tell you something totally different, then that's on you if you want to believe that. They're just making this stuff up. And these elitists, they're setting these black men up to write these books and setting these Christians up like Vocab and I can't remember all their names. The doctors and whoever else to bring this false doctrine out. But first, John 8:32, I like to read this, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. They answered him, this is what Yahushua said to the Jews, we be Abraham's seed, and we're never in bondage to any man. Right, because in the law, if you woke up to the truth, you were considered freed. But you can't be free if you're still in slavery and you still sin. Now sayest thou, ye shall be made free. Yahushua answered them, verily, verily, I say unto you, whosoever committeth sin is a servant of sin. Right? And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the Son of Man abideth forever. So this was these Jesuits, these Christians, they went and got the Bible, right? And a lot of people will say, well, the Bible was it was a Christian book, white man's book. No, it wasn't. They took the Bible and took things out of it, so it couldn't have been a white man's book. But they used that Bible to destroy us. Now, true, some of us was worshiping different practices, even some forms of Christianity, for what I understand, but not the Christianity of plantationism that you know of today. Why did the Jesuits go over there and force convert them? You know one of the reasons why they converted them? Because they was in polygamy, and they called that a sin, which that was a made-up word. They gave that a word right about back then. Poly means many, right? So this is the problem with IUIC went over to Ghana or wherever he went. Those are Christians that still believe in men, multiple wives. So they had a problem with that, right? So what they had to do is give them a new Jesus and a new believer. So this whole time, let me go to some AI, right? And we're going to go into this a little bit. And this is from the Khan's Academy, right? The 1700s, 1740 was supposed to be the Great Awakening. Did you know the start of the Great Awakening was forced conversion of Christians, right? Of Negroes. This woman said, if I'm not mistaken, she said that they wanted to be Christians or whatever, and they didn't force them to be Christians or whatever, something she said. But what she doesn't know is at that time you had different sectors of white people whom some wanted to convert blacks into Christianity to make them, right, more softer or more like easier to control. I haven't read this yet, but I'm sure it's got something in there. It makes them easier to control, right? And I did videos on this before. Then you had the other ones, right? You had the evangelicals. Then you had the Protestants, the protesters, who said, no, we don't think that should happen. So you had a fight, like the North and the South. So you had a fight between them against how to do what they want to do with their slaves. And then you had the small hats who had their hand in it, you know, who said, well, we're Jews and you're Christians. Just make them all Christians. That's the worst thing they could have did to us. But the Lord said he was going to do it. So in other words, to be a Christian meant you were a believer of Jesus, right? But then they gave us a white Jesus. They didn't even give us the original Jesus. So that should tell you there was something to that. So anyway, the Great Awakening, despite an emphasis on spirituality equality, did not lead to an abolition of slavery at the time, which that didn't go for like another 100 years. By the way, slave ships were still coming back and forth, but that's another video. Slaveholders continued to use biblical passages to justify the practice and an enforced obedience from those they enslaved, while some preachers like Samuel Davies, right, advocated for the spiritual equality of enslavement and free people. The institution of slavery remained deeply entrenched in colonial society. In fact, the aftermath of slave rebellions like Stonewall Rebellion in 1739 and the New York conspiracy trials in 1741, which were driven in part by anxieties of among white colonists regarding slave uprisings, strict new slave codes and enacted. You see what I'm saying? So they started promoting different slave statutes and codes as time went on when it came to slaves, because we would start rebelling. And this is why they took the Bible and then later on they gave us the slave Bible. This is exactly what they did. But where this woman is wrong is that, let's go to something else real quick. Where this woman is wrong is that as I said before, you had different types of slaves. I mean, white people who wanted slavery, you had different factions of that, right? Mark 13:21, I'm going to get to that in a second. And then if any man shall say, lo, here is the Christ, or lo, he is here, there, believe him not. So you would have even some of our people who understood this and said, no, this man can't be the Christ, right? So let's go on down to here, another AI. The relationship between now I typed this in about evangelicals converting slaves. Because I know it, that's why I put it up, typed it in there. The relationship between evangelicals, Christianity, and slavery in America was complex and deeply contradictory, revealing significant tensions with the movement. Many white evangelical slaveholders generally believed in converting enslaved people to Christianity, but their motivation and methods reflected their racist assumption. They often saw conversion as a way to make enslaved people more docile and obedient, believing that Christian slaves would be less likely to rebel, more accepting of their bondage. And remember what I said earlier, this is why when the white man helped the so-called black docile slave build the Christian church, what you have is the KKK, which I don't even think YouTube or internet understands or admit that these demons came out of the church, right? That these demons came out of the Protestant church. And what they did is went around with crosses and said, we don't believe, that those people, they had it right. They said those people ain't the real people of God. But then they took it on to say that they were the real people of God because blacks were considered the curse of Canaan, right? This is what they taught. So you had another group, and then when we would build those churches, and these clans would burn down the churches. But the elitists, you know what I'm saying, the small hats, they needed to keep us Christian because they was onto our identity. It made sense. Make these Negroes Christians. That way they can be who they are. We can set up preachers and pastors of their own, some of them tares, and reteach them the gospel of Jesus while we still maintain that we're the real Jews. And that's exactly what happened. And then our people converted over the hundreds of years. The next 100 years, you had a great conversion. Because by then we was already broken, right? You got extra benefits. I read up on this stuff. You got books on that. You could get a book on called "To How to Make a Slave" that was written in the 1800s. I read some of it. Anyway, the slavery has potentially beneficial to Africans by civilizing them through Christianity. These slave-holding evangelicals developed theological justification for slavery. This is why we call it plantation Christianity. The original Christianity was pro-Jews, because Acts 11:26 tell you the Jews were Christians. How did these people claim that they were Jews? Because if that's the case, there would be a big part of them who would believe in the Messiah. But they don't. Anyway, the real Jews will believe in the Messiah, period. Some won't, but a majority would. Arguing that it was definitely sanctioned, right, which is penalized, and their role was to be benevolent Christian masters. They cherry-picked biblical passages about servants obey masters while ignoring broader Christian principles about human equality and freedom. Now, the Christian principle was really towards the Israelites. That's why he told Agrippa what he said. And Agrippa said, "Thou almost made me to be a Christian," which means to be merciful. Many believed they were fulfilling Christian duties by the saving souls, even while maintaining people in bondage. And you got to remember, these scholars, these Jesuits, they read the Old Testament. So when they read the Old Testament and saw what happened with Joshua and Ai and various forms of the Bible, this is what they felt they needed to do. This is why the Bible was so dangerous, because these people could take this on and say that these were the people which made up some small hats, believe it or not, and then they needed blacks, so-called blacks, to say that they were Christians and not say they were Jews. That was the key. And this is why today you have this influx of these platforms coming against Hebrew Israelites and not Pan-Africanisms or any other black people, right? This is why you have that. I mean, it's a lot to read on this. The evangelicals typically insisted on controlling how Christianity was taught to enslave people. They emphasize obedience, submission, and finding joy in serving others. So I'm not going to say 100 years later, after we were already a broken people, right, and you fed it to the women, and the women raised their children to believe in Christianity, and then ultimately everybody just started converting to white Jesus. And she said nobody forced it on you. This woman said this. Well, my mother did. She meant no harm. She just put on me what she was taught. Go into church and a white Jesus will save you. And we have yet to see, according to this great awakening, where's Jesus been? Hundreds of years in this great awakening, where's Jesus? I'll wait. All this time, no Savior? In fact, through all this time, let's go to Deuteronomy 28:48. Let's go here. And then you have the scholars that are set up to say, well, wait a minute, that was back in 70 AD, all the prophecies were fulfilled. But yet, the Messiah is coming back, which is another prophecy. And the prophets would have to raise up and teach the people what the hell has just happened. But yet, preachers call themselves preacher, which is another word for prophet or interpreter, right? Because they'll say, well, wait, if the prophecy's already written, then how could you be a prophet if it's already written? Because another word for prophet means interpreter. When have these preachers ever interpreted the scriptures and prophesied what's coming to pass? When? You got a lot of fake ones like this Philip Anthony Mitchell, who is now trying to come into the rapture and hype himself up, and people leave churches and come to him. Anyway, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So now it's a problem when we see this. because now everybody has a problem with us reading our own history. And then Christians will go into the commentators and say, well, it can't be you Jews, you Israelites, you black people, because this already happened. Now, of course, when these things was written, these commentations, when they were written in the 1800s and early 1900s, you really think they were going to tell the so-called blacks and Hispanics, you know what? Deuteronomy 28, 68, 64, scattered amongst all nations, this fits you. Although these things happen to us. That's why it doesn't hold up. Right? These prophecies are still here. They pay these scholars to tell us that the prophecies is done away with. They pay these scholars and black scholars with jerry curls to tell us that in Christian over in Africa this didn't happen. Although the Jesuits went around with the cross and holding the sign up and the Christian and slaughtering people because they didn't believe in Jesus. Hey, you Native Americans too. They beheaded a lot of you. Do you know where the term come from? Are you saved in the Lord? You had a lot of stubborn Israelite Jews, black Jews, who said, no, I'm not following this. And they were killed for it. And the ones that broke down and started making a covenant with the heathen, as Maccabee says, they said, yes, I'm saved in the Lord. Because if you wasn't saved in the Lord, you were tortured or punished. Look this stuff up. Don't let these black people try to rewrite history and change your perspective on what you know to believe and saw the whole time. This is what they do. And then come up with these new theologies, right? These newfound thoughts on what happened in history. Ephesians 5 and 8. Let's go back here. Now it says also that some of them embraced Christianity on their own terms. If you put yourself back in that time and you seen your father get his ass whipped, your mama and sister get their ass whipped and forced into Christianity, you knew it wasn't going to be a good outcome. So you got to understand the psychological factor of what these people were going through would definitely accept Christianity. Right? If you took a group of women and put them in an end time situation, apocalyptic time, and all they saw was murder and bloodshed, and they said, well, you want to convert to be a harlot? A lot of these women know what's going to come. So they would willingly convert themselves to do what is normal according to that time or that society. And this is what happened with us. Why wouldn't they have converted? What did they have? You saw you got better benefits. You got, you got better benefits. You probably got better food. You probably got treated better. Christmas came around. You probably got gifts. You probably got the break. And by the way, they was following the Sabbath during the time of slavery. When you look it up, they was following the actual Sabbath. They allowed the slaves to follow the Sabbath. So you would follow the Sabbath and you'll be able to do the things that was convenient for you. This is why they would convert. Of course. Why wouldn't they? They had no other source of understanding. And you got to understand, this is over years and years and years. Anyway, Ephesians 5 and 8. For ye was sometime darkness, but now ye are in the light of the Lord. Walk as the children of light. This is how we converted. Think about it. How do you think we converted? Some of us was forced converted, even as children. Our mothers forced us to go into those churches. And we converted to Christianity. But I think black Christians, white Christians, Christians in general, they're carnal. They had no idea. This is why they keep doing videos. They're trying to stop it. Oh, the blacks are waking up, and they're Jews. They're claiming they're Jews, and they're doing away with the Christian church. They don't understand this is a spiritual thing. As much as they talk about the spirit, and faith, they don't have faith. Because if they did, they would know there's nothing they can do with what the Most High is doing. This is why he said, walk as the children of light. Right? For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and in truth, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, and having no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. There's no way you could tell me to be a Christian meant to love the Lord, and you put a false image up and say follow him. But then if I say put a picture of Satan up, and then am I supposed to bow down to him, you will say no because of what Satan looks like. But then you tell me his color don't matter. This is sick, right? And we are no longer going for this, right? And that's why brothers like me and other brothers in the truth and even other Israelites are pumping out videos on this retarded sickness that's in our people. You can have white Jesus. We don't want him. That's all I have on that. Shalom.